Good evening. This is the August 7th, 2024 meeting of the services of the Sunbury Services Committee. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Capel.
Here.
Mayor St. John.
Here.
Ms. Strayer. Here. Mr. Grumney.
Here.
Four present. We have quorum.
Thank you. I believe we're going to start off with an introduction.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I wanted to introduce to the Services Committee, Carla Olabrowski. We've talked a little bit about Carla joining the city staff. She's here for her first meeting this evening. Again, Carla will be serving as our Director of Planning and Engineering. As a result of that, she will serve as the city's engineer. She will also serve as the director of our planning team. So Alyssa and Alex will be reporting through her. So you'll be seeing her connected to not only engineering projects, but also planning related projects. And not that there isn't some overlap there already. So I think beginning probably with the next month, we'll start to see her kind of support the committees in Dan's stead. So with that, just wanted to introduce Carla to the group.
Welcome, Carla.
Yeah.
All right. Hope everyone got a chance to review the minutes. I'd like to make a motion to approve the July 3rd minutes. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Grumney. Roll call.
Mr. Capel.
Yes.
Mr. Grumney.
Yes.
Mayor St. John.
Yes.
Ms. Strayer. Yes. 4 yeas.
All right. Don't see that we have any visitors scheduled. We'll move on to our new and unfinished business with the sidewalk assessment.
All right, so I'm going to ask Grant Colson to come up. Grant's going to do a presentation on the work he's been doing this summer to do a comprehensive assessment of the city sidewalk. In your packet is the full report that he's put together, but he's got a shortened version of it for the presentation. So give him a few minutes to do the introduction or to do the overview, and then allow some time for some comments and questions.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys again for kind of, sponsoring this internship this summer. I've learned a lot. I've been working on this project for a long time. I think I first went out to evaluate sidewalks in late May. Now it's, early August, and here we are. So this is going to be kind of the final report of the Sunbury sidewalk evaluation. Maybe.
Did you turn it on?
There we go. Okay, so first thing, I did put together this interactive table of contents that's more for your use. If you end up going back through the presentation, you can kind of click on what you want to see, and it'll take you right to that slide rather than flipping through. So first, it's important to talk about just kind of the general goal of what this assessment was. It was to locate damaged sidewalks of various causes and severity, while also identifying locations where sidewalks do not exist. Again, this was completed this summer. It does account for all sidewalks within the city limits. I did use the Sunbury's ArcGIS Trimble technology, and that was very useful. And again, this is just a baseline report. None of its contents are binding in any nature. So as I first started to kind of get into this, one thing I realized, and at first I looked at chapter 905 of the codified ordinances, and I realized that there's really no language in there that defines what's a serviceable sidewalk versus a defected sidewalk. So with that, I kind of had to come up with a ranking system evaluation method so that I can do that. And the first step in that was a ranking system. As it's shown below, we see, rank 5 through 1 being high priority concerns, 5 being excellent sidewalk. As it ended up playing out, as I was out evaluating sidewalks, was on the GIS, you're not going to see a lot of, rank 4 or 5 data points. The reason being is doing so would mean virtually every sidewalk panel is going to have a data point, and that's just going to overcrowd the map unnecessarily. So it is safe to say on GIS that where there is no data point, the sidewalk is at least low priority, but in most cases it's good. And then here, kind of on the right side of the screen, you can see how it's visualized in GIS. Okay, so within this ranking system, there were certain things I was looking for. Cracking, holes, spalling, trip hazards, root damage, and then miscellaneous items as well. And then as it was put into GIS, the data point title would be the type of defect. So for example, cracking, and then various information about it, and perhaps affecting 5 panels. So what that means is a data point isn't necessarily one sidewalk panel. A data point could mean 5, it could mean 10, 2, or 1. And then going back to the ranking system, the color of the data point is dependent on how it was ranked. But aside from me just going out there qualitatively judging these things, what's like physical measurements or metrics so that we can like properly rank these and have more of a scientific approach to it. So I'll talk briefly about that. So I know it's kind of blocked, but on the left we have cracking. We understand what sidewalk cracks are. And what I said is, okay, it's going to be a high priority data point if the crack width is greater than or equal to a 1/2 inch. Same thing with crack depth. Or say a sidewalk is cracked into 4 or more pieces, then it's going to be high priority. Now, it doesn't mean all 3 of those are happening at the same time. It's, one of those is necessary for it to be a high priority. And then, a couple examples here to kind of show that the pictures may not be totally ideal, but, that kind of comes with the Trimble. Now, holes, we see, this was more qualitative. I mean, if there's a hole in the sidewalk, in most cases, that's going to be high priority. But there were some cases where it was not. On the left here, we have spalling. So let's say 25% of the surface of a sidewalk is spalled to roughly a depth of a 1/2 inch, then that's going to be high priority. Now, in some cases, maybe it's not as, the example on the far left versus the one next to it, maybe if it's not as, consistently, flaked off or, just bad in general, that's going to be a medium priority. Trip hazards, what we said, and Daryl and I talked about this, is if we see a vertical rise greater than or equal to 2 inches, that's going to be labeled as high priority. And in most cases, that's going to be meaning we're going to need to likely replace the whole panel, because you can trip hazards less than that. You could bevel those, meaning, let's like shave off the trip hazard at an angle and keep the panel there. But doing it greater than or equal to 2 inches, it's going to kind of impede on the integrity of the concrete itself. So that is kind of how those were ranked. Moving on to root damage. This is when roots are getting under the sidewalk, they're cracking them, they're lifting them up, and other various defects. And really the way that was ranked was, okay, let's say the root has cracked something to a width of greater than or equal to a 1/2 inch. According to the cracking method, okay, that's high priority, then we're going to rank it as high priority under root damage. Now, say, it's causing a trip hazard of 1 inch, that's going to be medium priority according to what we've already said with trip hazard. So it was it was a case by case basis when it came to root damage. Miscellaneous was kind of a catch all for things not included on those. The example here, we see a trip hazard accompanied with sanitary sewer there. There's multiple things going on. That was a miscellaneous data point. So some other metrics that we looked at: ADA non-compliance. I'll talk briefly about that next. Vegetation obstructions, these were tracked in GIS. This was, tree branches that are, impeding on the vertical clearance of sidewalk. Say there was a bunch of grass overgrowth impeding on the width. That was tracked. Quality sidewalk, rather than putting a bunch of excellent data points down for example, the communities at Sunbury, virtually new sidewalk, you just put a whole, highlighted all green. That means, these are quality sidewalks. There's virtually no defects. Missing sidewalk, this was a line point layer. Anywhere in Sunbury where a road did not have a sidewalk, it was labeled. Even if one side of the road did, the other side that didn't have sidewalk was labeled. Unserviceable sidewalk, this was rare, luckily. But this was, say there was a section where there's so many high priority points, let's just label the whole stretch as unserviceable. And that was helpful rather than, just putting 100 data points in. This was very helpful. Multi-purpose paths. These were not evaluated, but from an aerial GPS view, it looks like sidewalk. So I made that clear. City boundary, we want to know its inner jurisdiction. Stuff under construction was labeled. And then we have exclusion zones, areas where a different, governing body, for example, like oversees sidewalk maintenance, takes schools, certain apartment complexes, Kroger, for example, those were not fully evaluated by me. Okay, so ADA non-compliance here. These are sort of the textbook things that need to be happening on our sidewalks to have ADA compliance. Most of these items were accounted for in the GIS, specifically the bottom item, missing or faded crosswalks. That was something I certainly kept an eye out for, along with curb ramp violations, meaning that, you know, there's no raised dome or textured surface, you know, as the sidewalk meets the road. Those were probably the bottom two items were the ones that I specifically noted everywhere throughout Sunbury. Moving on to kind of our cost estimation method. So, you know, obviously if I'm collecting data, it's going to help to know, like, okay, what's maybe the cost to, you know, fix some of these things. But there were some just general assumptions that had to be made for that. So we said all panels in Sunbury, we're just going to assume they're 4 feet by 5 feet. That's not the case in reality, but it's a good estimate for all the sidewalks. And then according to a different estimation or bidding process that we had, we said, okay, 1 square foot of replacement is going to be $14, and say our panels are 4 feet by 5 feet. That's going to yield $280 per panel. We did talk about the beveling. I mentioned that earlier. We could not get a reliable figure on that. So we said any beveling opportunities, we're going to treat those as full panel replacements, meaning any cost estimates, if anything, they're going to overestimate. And then ADA noncompliance, that was excluded, costs associated with that. Painting, repainting, crosswalks, you know, that was negligible, along with vegetation obstructions. And then at the bottom there, you see just a general equation for those long segments of missing or unserviceable. That equation there is kind of how, you know, we calculated the cost estimate for that. So I'm going to talk about how the data was broken down. We split it up into 4 different zones here. They're created by the intersection of 3637, State Route 3, the red star there, that's our origin, if you want to call it that. And then following a breakdown of each zone, I'll talk about the data as a whole. Here's a legend for you guys for future reference. All right, so Zone A. In Zone A, we are looking at essentially items south of the square and east of State Route 3. We have the middle school here, the communities at Sunbury. That's kind of the general area we're talking about. Here's the breakdown of data here. Something that, you know, might stick out. A lot of panels in the high priority column are affected by cracking. As you move to medium priority, we see cracking again is common, along with, you know, we do have 25 trip hazards there, which, you know, in reality could be beveled. Low priority cracking again is a big thing. We do have over 22,000 feet of missing sidewalk in Zone A, 13 missing crosswalks. We do have a lot of quality sidewalk, which is a good thing. That's because of the communities at Sunbury. That's relatively new sidewalk. And then, so here are some general takeaways from Zone A. Zone A does have the least amount of data points and affected panels compared to the other zones. There are long stretches of missing sidewalk, primarily on Southfield 3C, and that is part of the recommendations, which I'll get to later. I'll talk more about that. In general, the sidewalk in Zone A is of decent quality. And then I did, you know, do a heavy evaluation near the square. A lot of people come here, you know, I felt like, you know, that's important. And for that reason, you do see a lot of low priority data points there, just because, you know, I really didn't let anything slide when it came to the area surrounding the square. Here are the rough cost estimates for these things. So Model 1, moving left to right, Model 1 basically says, all right, let's replace the high priority ones, along with any unserviceable lengths, which we did not have in Zone A. Model 2 says, all right, high and medium priority. Model 3, high, medium, and low, along with, let's say we want to put in anywhere there's missing sidewalk, let's put in new sidewalk. So that's why really the missing sidewalk component is why you see such a drastic difference between Model 1 and Model 2. But you know, again, these are rough estimations for, you know, what it might take to do some work. Moving on to Zone B, we're looking at items essentially northeast of the square, not including the square, and then southeast of 36. Moving on, we see, this is kind of the general breakdown. We do see, you know, many more panels affected in Zone B. The main cause here in the high priority column is spalling. In the medium priority, we see a lot of trip hazards, not a lot of low priority data points there, primarily just because the sidewalk is not in good condition. A lot of these qualified as higher medium priority. We do see a lot of missing sidewalk as well. 26 missing crosswalks, 11 ramp violations. And actually in zone B, this is the only zone with unserviceable sections. And if we go here, you do see it on East Granville Street, those pink stretches at kind of at the bottom right here. That's where the unserviceable parts are. It's pretty much only those sections throughout the whole city. So moving on here, we see it does have the most affected panels and the most data points compared to any other zone, which, you know, is to be expected. It's the oldest part of Sunbury. We expect the sidewalk to be the worst there. A lot of missing sidewalks, especially as you approach 36 from the south. In general terms, the sidewalk is subpar in zone B. And for that reason, the cost evaluations are the most expensive. Again, you know, if you want, you guys can kind of dive into this a little more later, but you do see, you know, again, a big difference between Model 1 and Model 3. Again, that's due to the replacing the missing sidewalk. If we're going to put in a new sidewalk, everywhere it's missing. That's why you see such a difference. And you do see, you know, the unserviceable portions there, you know, that is hefty in the price as well. Zone C here, this is essentially the areas surrounding Big Walnut High School along with the estates. I know that we've talked about the estates before and root damage there. That is a main theme here. Getting into the data, we see that holds high priority. We have 86 high priority panels affected by root damage, 98 total high priority panels. Medium priority, same trend holds, root damage, 135 panels affected in the medium priority column. Low priority, similar, not as many data points though, to be expected. Missing sidewalk, moderate amounts. We do have some quality sidewalk there. Vegetation ADA is, you know, not as hefty as other zones. It is the second highest amount of data points in zone C, a high density in the estates, root damage, common theme. Moderate lengths of missing in quality, and then, you know, the sidewalk quality there is fine. It's just we have a lot of root damage going on that's popping up sidewalk. A lot of high priority root damage concerns there. These are rough cost estimates for zone C. Again, no unserviceable lengths, so that's, you know, luckily we can kind of exclude that. But, you know, looking at high priority panels here in Model 1. You know, we're roughly coming out to, you know, $27,500 there. Zone D, this is basically items southwest of West Cherry Street, northwest of State Route 3. We see Kroger here, we see the intermediate school, along with the Price Ponds, Rolling Hills developments, which is all under construction. That could not be fairly evaluated, but it is still labeled in there. General conditions here, we see not a lot of high priority panel, at least compared to the other zones, not a high panel total in the high priority column, most of which is either trip hazards or cracking. Moving to the medium priority, we see 74 trip hazards here, which again, those are going to be between 1/4 inch and 2 inches. Low priority cracking is a theme there. Moderate amount of missing sidewalk, a lot of decent amount of quality sidewalk. ADA non-compliance, we do have 11 faded crosswalks. I mean, those can be managed fairly easily. And then this is where, you know, we see a lot of sidewalk under construction. Only zone A has fewer data points than zone D. Much of zone D is under construction and could not be evaluated. The sidewalk quality is fair in zone D, but defects do exist. And then these are the bottom bullet point there is kind of the common themes. Model 1, this is a cost breakdown. The cost estimates here are much less than some other ones. And again, if you guys want to dive into that a little bit more, that can be done, but it's important that we talk about the aggregate results. So let's combine all these zones. Let's see what the total is like. So this is all data collected in this spreadsheet here. So we see in total, we have 384 sidewalk panels. in the high priority column. The winner of the day is root damage in the high priority column. Medium priority, we see the winner there is 239 trip hazards affecting in the whole column itself, 590 panels affected in the medium priority column. Low priority cracking is a common theme, 109 panels affected. On the whole, we have 46 missing crosswalks, 13 faded, 19 ramp violations as well. Various vegetation obstructions throughout, over 72,000 feet of missing sidewalk. Quality sidewalk, nearly 100,000 feet, which is a good thing. And the same amount of unserviceable sidewalk that's all in Zone B, and then a good amount under construction as well. So basically, let's just take things at face value here. Medium priority data points occur twice as often as high priority, 4 times as often as low priority. And, we see a surplus of orange dots. That's, to be expected when you have a lot of medium priority data points. Over 72,000 feet of missing sidewalk. Construction is prevalent, as we've stated. A considerable number of ADA noncompliance data points. And they're not concentrated in one area either. So this is a theme kind of throughout. And something encouraging is that we do have more quality sidewalk than missing and unserviceable segments combined. So that is a good thing. These are the aggregate cost models on the whole. We see model 1, rounding up to $172,000. Model 2, roughly $335,000. And then, if we want to do a sidewalk overhaul in model 3, we're looking at roughly $5.5 million for that. This is for your own use at a future point in time. If you want to take, let's say you want to do cost model 1 on certain zones, maybe an overhaul in different zones, you can plug and place those for your own use. That's included as well. So recommendations, it is recommended that Sunbury determine which segments of missing sidewalk are ideal candidates to receive new sidewalks. That's why the cost estimates are so all over the place, because, I didn't want to make any assumptions on where the city might want to put in new sidewalk. This is crucial for increasing walkability, and again, the cost estimates. I would specifically recommend investigating Big Walnut the areas surrounding Big Walnut Middle School and Big Walnut Elementary School on Southold 3C. As kids may have to start walking to school a little bit more. I think that's important to maybe look at sidewalks around there. It is recommended that Sunbury further investigate beveling. That could be cost effective, but also effective on the ground in terms of remediation of more panels in that category. I do recommend that maybe somebody with a little more credentials look at the ADA noncompliance points, and what remediations must take place to reach compliance. I think that's an important question. And it's also recommended that special focus be given to Zone B in Sunbury Square, the oldest parts of Sunbury. That's important. As we saw, it does contain the worst sidewalks. Many cities consider 25 years to be the rough estimate of how long sidewalks can last. Hopefully, this report and methodology can maybe serve as, at least a base for, future iterations in the, coming up. I would recommend, maybe once every decade, somebody goes out and kind of does this again to gather data so that you guys can make the formal decisions on it. And then again, I'd mentioned this earlier, but Chapter 905 of Sunbury Codified Ordinances, throughout this process, I looked at a lot of other cities and their ordinances. And the problem with ours is, I think the language could be improved, just so that people can properly identify themselves, residents. Okay, what's a serviceable sidewalk and what is defective? Do I need to replace this myself? What's the deal with that? I think improving the language could help a lot of people, but also help the city as well. And then again, all this data is in GIS. I recommend that you guys get on there, use it, especially if you want to look at a specific area. And then, community involvement with any public infrastructure is important as well. So this is kind of just a conclusion here. This report was conducted this summer. 600 plus data points were collected. We have information on over 1,000 sidewalk panels. Also tracked were, ADA noncompliance, missing, unserviceable, quality, vegetation obstructions, right of way under construction, among other data points. And then again, these are sort of the cost models and what they yield. So that was essentially my summer. I learned a lot about sidewalks. I think anywhere I go now, whether it's here or a city elsewhere, my eyes are always on the ground. Any crack, any defect, I'm noticing it now. So I'm in a sense corrupted in terms of sidewalks. So, but if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Grant, thank you very much. Appreciate all the work you've done on the sidewalk assessment. I did want to just maybe clarify a point. So Grant referenced chapter 905. That is the city's current codified ordinance. It is in your packet just for references or reference. I think it's packet page 5 or 6 is where it begins. But an important point to note is that the responsibility for maintaining sidewalks falls to the property owner. And I know Grant said a couple of times, if we were to do, and we've talked a lot about this. The understanding is, again, most of this responsibility would fall to the property owner if the city wanted to go in that direction. And this report doesn't begin to conclude, which direction, which policy choice you're going to make. The other thing that it says in here is that, and this is where another point where I think it's helpful what Grant has done. He's at least tried to put some metrics to the existing sidewalk condition. If we look to the city ordinance, it does give to the city engineer some authority to determine, what is serviceable or defective, but no definitions around that. So now we at least got something if we wanted to move in that direction. I mean, ultimately, that would be the city engineer has to kind of come to the same conclusion, but there's something here, to begin to work from. So I just wanted to clarify those.
Yeah, no, that's important. And right in chapter 905, it specifically states that, it is the property owner's, responsibility to maintain the sidewalk. That's important.
But I think we did learn some important things, certainly about crosswalks. I mean, things that might be going across the road where we want to have some involvement. The obstructions that are a result of vegetation, that might be relatively low hanging fruit for us to kind of improve upon that type of thing. The other thing I guess I want to add quickly, the cost estimates, again, that was to just give you some order of magnitude of kind of if the city were to go in this direction, what could be the cost associated with that to the homeowner. Again, not that the city assumes that responsibility. There may be some things the city, well, there are some things, the square, I mean, at least certainly around the internal part of the square. I mean, there are some things that would fall to the city, but most of those would be expenses that would be passed on to a property owner. So anyway, questions, thoughts, comments?
I think this is really great work, Grant. You should be proud of what you accomplished this summer. It gives us a really good starting point, a really good baseline to move forward with potential sidewalk plans, whether it's us doing them or working with property owners to do it. I'm curious, your data collection, very, very manual. You were out hitting the roads for every single one of these sidewalks, right? At any point, did you go back and reset and change your approach again? Or did you have it pretty much nailed from the beginning?
So it did evolve over time. Now, the good thing with GIS is when you lay a data point, and I was taking pictures with every data point. So say I updated the method, I could go back, I have a visual picture, I can say, okay, well, we can classify this a different way. It did evolve over time. It doesn't necessarily mean I walked every sidewalk twice or multiple times, but I mean, every panel in Sunbury was walked at least once. So it was a lot of miles. I mean, so a couple of days I tracked the mileage, and there were a couple of days where it was upwards of 7 miles of sidewalks. So it was good though. It got me outside, which was nice.
Warm summer for that particular type of project. Yeah. Thank you though.
Absolutely.
Very good work. Any other questions?
I just say once again, nice presentation, very thorough, very understandable, great presentation skills as far as presenting it. And Daryl, you answered my question about responsibility because I was, I assume it's the same with the vegetation obstructions and that sort of thing too.
Exactly.
So, okay. Because I was concerned if Sunbury, I always thought homeowners were responsible for their sidewalk, and when I see $5-6 million, it's like yikes. No, clearly this was a lot of hard work. And you poured a lot of work into this, so thank you for providing this. Yeah.
You have anything, Molly?
Right, great job.
Thank you.
I had some questions And as you gave your presentation, you answered each one, like, the trip hazard, the
Mhm.
sizes, and what was industry standard, which was a fourth of an inch or more. And I wanted to know how many miles of missing, because I know there are several areas around the city that don't have sidewalks, and we have 72,000. Is that correct?
That is correct. Now, it is important to note that we had some stumbling blocks with GIS with units, but essentially we were able to piece together what essentially became a conversion factor that allowed us to convert GIS units into feet. So there is some margin of error, but we ran through this a lot, and it's roughly correct. I mean, it's maybe I think it's a 2 to 4% error on any measurement.
Yeah, maybe the other important point here is I think we decided to default to if there was not there may have been a sidewalk on one side of the street, but not on the other. We did count the missing sidewalk on the other side of the street. So just, again, maybe that's not where the city would ultimately want to land, but I think we were just trying to capture the most data we possibly could.
Right.
So,
Right.
I wanted to ask you what your remedies were gonna be, since you dove into this, and you gave them. Along with proper costs and proper aggregate and water per sack measurements. So good job.
Hey, thank you.
Grant, great job. I'm really happy with the intern program. You were our pilot and you landed the plane. So thank you very much. Daryl and staff, I hope we can expand this program next year. Grant set the ceiling pretty high for the next set of interns. At least a handful of public presentations. We can always say that he really worked from the bottom to the top, literally working out of the basement in a closet. So these are life experiences that we know that you'll look back on this time and say, wow, look at what I accomplished and where I am now. But I also want to thank you for the recommendations. This is a great base layer. I think it's actually quite a bit more than just a foundational layer. I think you gave us a great head start. But in terms of the recommendations, I think there's one that we should follow up on pretty quickly, and that is just evaluating our chapter 905 in the revised code and getting some more stringent definitions and do some like market analysis, comparable community comparisons to see what other communities have done. I know we did some of that analysis as part of the Sunbury Estates project. What do other communities do? How do they select vendors? How do they enforce standards and make sure you're getting a repeatable process? And Joe neighbor, like Joe St. John, goes out and puts in a sidewalk and says, hey, here, this is acceptable. So I do think we need to get some more robust standards around section 905. I like your recommendations around like prioritizing school zones. I think that's a common sense strategy. I know that we've had some recommendations lately about adding sidewalks in and around school zones. Sometimes it's not as straightforward as just slapping down a sidewalk in somebody's front yard. Not everybody wants that, but we need to take a community-led approach. So thank you again. Great work.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me this summer. It's been really good experience. So, and I hope that, more interns in the future get the same experience because it's been great. So
I
thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you, Grant.
Thank you.
all right. Can we hand the clicker to?
While you're doing that, that was extremely good. And when you graduate, if you're looking for a job, I know a really good private firm you can.
There you go.
Engineering.
All right.
Speaking of that, you get to follow it now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Walnut Street.
I should have gone first. So this presentation I showed tonight, most of you have seen most of the information in here. A good bit of it is a review of what we talked about before. Which is good for Carla as well. The Walnut Street Stabilization Project, located, as you might guess, on Walnut Street in Sunbury is, well, first I'll just talk about the agenda. I wanted to again, reevaluate or review the concern, what our proposed solution was, the funding that, big kudos to Mr. Parkinson. He was able to get a very large grant to accomplish this project. Much credit to him. And we've gotten that grant, gone through engineering, and I want to review the next steps, where we stand with it, and then answer any questions. This is the location of the project itself. It's located along the street just south of McGill Street. The banks of Big Walnut Creek are undercutting, and they've washed away the much of the road and become a very unsafe condition. The road has been closed since 2011, which creates obviously access concerns north-south along that corridor, and particularly emergency services. When they can't get through there, it's fenced off, and could create potential problems. So that's a picture of what it looks like. And this was taken, I believe, last year. It hasn't changed a whole lot, but it does continue to fall down. The information on the left there is really just kind of shows the flashiness of Big Walnut Creek, how it comes up and goes down so quickly with a high velocity and a high erosivity, which is taken that it's not soil, it's rock. It's been significant enough that it's taken away some of that rock and undercut that embankment. And take some trees and some other stuff with it as well. And this is a picture of from the one of our guys went out there and got on the other side of the creek and took some good pictures of it. This would have been a good place to take some drone pictures of, but this does show you the area of the failure itself from a different perspective than just standing up on the road and looking at it there. So with this, the solution that Mr. Parkinson came up with was to stabilize that roadway embankment along Big Walnut Creek with a type of construction referred to as soil nailing. Soil nailing is not real common. It's a ground reinforcement technique which uses grouted tension with resistant enforcing rods that are pounded back into the embankment. It does have to have stable rock back there, which it does, but it puts that in there, and then you put a wall over top of it. It's not real common. It is somewhat common in large highway jobs. I'm not positive of this, but I'm pretty sure that wall, when you come up 23 on William Street in Delaware, that wall, I'm almost positive, is a soil nailed wall with a fascia put on top of it to make it look a little better. Not that it looks good, but that's the type of application this is on a smaller scale. It isn't, like I say, common. So it was sort of a niche contractor, which is driven the way we put together the plan so that there's roadway improvement plans to fix the road back, but the soil nailing itself is a contractor who will go in and take our initial design, which is relatively comprehensive, but he'll finalize that and refine it so that it meets the project needs. This was the solution that was identified in the grant application. You see there's about 80 foot of stabilization. With this approach, it looked like we needed to repair about 200 feet of the road, maybe a little less. It came out to slightly more than that, which affected our cost as well as the timing that's gone on since the original cost estimate was put together. This is just a kind of a stick figure example of what the soil nailing looks like. That skinny feature in the middle there is a long soil nail that's pounded back into. They're typically about 20 feet long. And they're pounded with a hydraulic hammer.
It's kind of like just a big wall hanger.
It's exactly what it's like, yeah. And it does, one other challenge with this project is it is in the floodway. Obviously the river or the creek itself is in the floodway, and we can't get in, we can't put any equipment in there. We have to do all this work from above. So that hammer will come up from over top and pound it back in. And there were some power lines that were in the way that we've gotten taken care of and moved. But so that's the general idea of what happens. I know it's not real specific, but you can see the magnitude of what happens into the side of the wall below the road to be able to rebuild that road. This is just more of the same. It's more detailed on the soil nail itself. Seeing that it's just a simple schematic. Now this shows and with some colorization, because I know you can't see it well, but it shows that 80 feet of stabilization is there in the cyan on the upper portion, the bright cyan. And that you can see that's almost identical to what was on the preliminary plan, although it did change just a little bit with some of the features that were required. The roadway improvements are 278 feet, I believe, and that's the pink. And the way that the geometry of the roadway works out, the typical section of the roadway needs to change from that pink to the gray. The pink part is graded with a slope toward the this side of the right of way. The remainder of it is maintained with a crowned roadway itself. The blue is McGill Street. We'll have to do just a little bit of work there as it enters into Walnut Street. And I didn't highlight it here, but there's a driveway or two that we'll also have to do a little bit of work on as we repair the road. These are typical sections of the roadway. As I mentioned, you can see on that top, that's it. The part that was pink, it's sloped away, and the other part is a crown. And then again, it's back to that. That's virtually identical on the right, the schematic that shows the soil nailing. So what the real gist of what we want to get to tonight is we do have it 95% design. It says 90 on the thing, but I got a set of plans today, which has just a few remaining comments. The cost estimate came out to, I can't read it from there, so I got to read it on my sheet, $419,500, which exceeds what we had in what the grant dollars gave us. We had $399,000, so we have a shortfall there of about $20,000 in construction, which is a challenge. The grant does require the city to put about $60,000 in of local funding. So this would bring that up to 80. But there is a workaround. We've talked to EMA. Our engineering design survey and investigation costs are less than what we had budgeted for and what we have in our contract with you. So we'll give some of that back and put that toward the actual construction. So then that cost is back down to what the original cost was, and we'll just not make as much money.
All in favor? Aye. So on the same page. First time in a while.
Yeah, look at you. You haven't grilled me yet on this one. So yeah, we had about $90,000 in fee left. We've got about probably $60,000 worth of work to do with the construction inspection and finishing up the design, et cetera. So that leaves $30,000. We can take that, whatever the overage is on construction, when we get to bidding, we can apply that to construction, and then you're back to solid. So that in essence, what I went over tonight is no different than what I went over with almost a year ago. But I did want to make it clear that the costs are a little bit higher, but we've got to work around for that, and we'll be able to accomplish it. We've confirmed it. Now, we haven't run it all the way up the flagpole with EMA, but the project manager we talked to said that should not be a problem. The budget was identified with these cost breakdowns, but we're able to, within reason, mix and match those funds toward different components of the project. And I didn't figure you'd have any problem with that. This said the 100% plans will be done next week. The project will go out to bid in September, which is consistent with what we said we'd do in the grant application. We should be able to award the project around October 1st and begin construction shortly thereafter, depending on the contractor and his design criteria and what weather effects we have. Of course, water levels as well. It's definitely needs to be done in a drier part of the season. But that is it. Happy to answer any questions.
I just have one question. On Walnut Street, are all the road improvements being done within the city boundary or any of those on township?
I believe there's a small portion of it, Mayor, that is in the township. We have had discussions with the township, and they're supportive in a way of letting us do it, not supportive in a way of helping pay for it.
Okay, of course. And I assume public safety 100% on board with this. I mean, like the fire chief, EMS. I know the police chief is.
I don't know about the fire, I haven't had a conversation with the fire chief.
I have not either, to be honest with you. I know Parkinson did back when we first started.
Yeah, we'll circle back with the chief.
Good question.
And the intent is to fully reopen that road.
The intent is to fully reopen that road in 2025. It'll certainly be open and ready to ride.
Does this type of work affect the load limit of that road? Like, do you have major, large trucks or anything on it?
That's another good question. I don't believe so, but I'll verify that with our design engineer, our structural engineer that was involved with the design.
I remember when we talked about this, I think it was last year,
Mhm.
and I thought it's just really cool.
Yeah.
So I want to come out and
It's definitely
see it when
unique.
they're doing it. Yeah.
Certainly unique. You don't see a lot of it, especially this size, which honestly is part of the concern, is to find a contractor that's willing. We did talk to one contractor out of Indiana that is willing to look at it. That was a year ago. I assume he's still willing to do so. But it might be difficult to find a qualified contractor to bid on it because of its niche.
Well, just one question. Do we have any idea what the utilization of that road was prior to it being shut down? I mean, how often was it used?
I mean, I live
It's good. How many cars?
So at least one.
I mean, it's utilized quite often being at that end. I
Yeah.
can only imagine how often it would be utilized.
Yeah,
Like, we came home from the Hartford Fair last night and it would be great just to turn onto Walnut Street and go home. But
Yeah,
I had to loop all the way.
it was circle around. Gotcha. Cool. Thank you.
And that would be a normal double lane street for school buses as well.
It'll still be the same width as it is currently. We're reestablishing it back to its existing width. It's not, there's no changes in it.
Just because I know we get some concerned residents on Walnut and other areas. So we should be aware of speeding and cut through. I mean, it's going to be a cut through. It's a road. But speeding and any road diet strategies that we can employ and to mitigate speeding back there. Just give it some thought.
Okay.
No solutions required at this meeting.
It's a really good approach right now. You can just close it down. and speed to it.
Yeah,
Really snarled it down.
We could, excuse me, we could do some sort of, probably similar to Sunbury Meadows with some paint, some sort of painting on it or something. And there will be guardrail on there as well, and that tends to slow people down.
Thank you.
Great. On to other updates. We have about 15 minutes here. Daryl, I'll let you pick and choose your priorities.
Yep, no, I will be quick on all four of these items. So I just wanted to provide a general update on where we are with each of these projects. So first one, Sunbury Estates Sidewalk and Tree Project, on packet page 58. We have for you an updated map of the properties that'll be affected by a sidewalk panel replacement and a tree replacement. We've also given you a list on packet page 60, so you can see the addresses. All of these residents received a certified letter, and we dropped off the letter as well on their front porch. That was done about a week ago. At this point, Alyssa is fielding questions or comments from residents, although not many have responded poorly. I mean, most of them are, or negatively. Most of them are just trying to understand the project and how it will proceed. There is an opt-out process, and again, we've got maybe another week or so to go with that. So we've lined up the concrete contractor to begin in September, and working closely with an arborist in the city. We have added him as a consultant for the project on the tree side. So he's made some recommendations in terms of the timing of the removal of the trees, the types of trees to replace it with. At this point, Alyssa is working on an updated letter to the residents, basically saying these will be the tree options for replacement. And we've got it down, I think, 3 or 4 options for them to choose from. And assuming that we can get all of those trees, that'll be the replacement strategy. So we do anticipate the trees will be down this year, and most of the trees will be replaced before the end of the calendar year, but it also depends a little bit on the weather. If the service team gets caught with a lot of cold weather, snowy weather early, that may slide some of the plantings into spring. But again, anticipate most will happen late this fall, early winter. So that's where we are with the sidewalk project and tree replacement project in Sunbury Estates. Next up is the Road 2024 Street Improvement Program. I meant to put this schedule in and I didn't put it in the packet. I apologize. I will forward this to all of you. So a lot is going to happen here in the next few days. Really, well, a lot has happened already with respect to the roadway improvements. A lot been happening on North Miller Drive. But Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So note that Saturday, they will be working on Saturday to stay on schedule. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, they will be milling the streets in the city. Some of those millings will go over to Freedom Park, but most of them will be taken off site and out of the city. So that'll be some level of disruption as they're milling the streets. Another important point to note is that we do have this small segment of Cherry Street on the list. That small segment of Cherry Street will be closed on Friday with a detour that has already been marked with the message boards. It'll be closed so that it can be repaved in its entirety and striped all in one day. So 1 day closure, and then Cherry Street will be back open on Saturday. Miller Drive, which is the other kind of, or another kind of key milestone for the contractor. They will begin laying the asphalt there, the first laying on, or the first coat on Saturday. They'll finish it up on Monday, the 12th. And then they've identified Wednesday and Thursday as the days to stripe it. There will be some temporary striping there. Keep in mind, school starts on the 14th. They will have committed to striping in the evening so as to not impact the school traffic. So still, again, showing a completion on August 14th as required by the contract. So, and then some additional work. They're going to fill out the rest of the streets. They have under this schedule, basically them completing the project here in August. They have until September to complete the project. So we'll keep an eye on how that works. Thanks to Carla and Jake. They've been working with the contractor monitoring this project, and also and working with our inspection contractor, I should say, DLZ, to monitor what's happening and respond to concerns. So that's the street program. The police and municipal building renovations, I did include this in the administrator report. The substantial completion on the buildings has been delayed about a week, 10 days. So at this point, we are, for the municipal building, we have the life safety inspection scheduled for tomorrow morning. Again, once we pass that, we'll be able to occupy the space. There is some punch list work that needs to be done. So it's not as if the project will be completed at that point, but occupancy will be permitted, assuming that we can get through that. So police building is a little bit farther behind. They had an issue with a gas line. So the gas line that comes into the building is not big enough to service both the building and the emergency generator. So they're going to detach the emergency generator, get sufficient gas into the building, and get the life safety inspection done there. And then we're working with Columbia Gas to basically upsize the service line to get that emergency generator connected as well. So that'll follow a little bit. I think the life safety inspection is scheduled, but not I think. I know the life safety inspection for the police building is scheduled for next week. What I don't know is whether it's Monday or Wednesday. It's one of those dates of next week. So, and again, once that is approved, they can begin to occupy it. Again, still some punch list items to take care of. But anyway, yeah, we did, we are using the conference space. Hopefully that went well for you today, Mayor. So at least it accommodated. So we are trying to begin to use the space just a little bit, but hopefully we're just a matter of days away from being able to use it in its entirety. And then the final thing I've got on the list is the wastewater treatment plant. We've talked a lot about this project. I did include in the packet, the last page in the packet. This project has gone out to bid. We're now accepting proposals from contractors to expand the wastewater plant from 1.1 million to 2 million gallons. We've been talking about this for a long, long time, so we have finally gotten to that stage. The tentative date for bid opening is scheduled for September 6th. So we'll be back in front of council and others in hopefully mid-September with a recommendation on a contractor. So a lot of good projects going on, but any questions or comments? on any of those items.
Great work.
All right. And that is it, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. Loaded meeting. Anything else for good of the order before we close? I'll make a motion to adjourn. Can I get a second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Grundy. Roll call.
Mr. Capel?
Yes.
Mr. Grundy?
Yes.
Mayor St. John?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
4 yeas, we are adjourned.
Thank you.